Welcome back to the Raising Rock podcast. I'm Elise and I am your host. Before we get into who is on the episode today, I do want to let you know today is not an episode that you want to have your children in the room for. So I'm going to give you a second, put your earbuds in, press pause, mute me, do something before I get into this because you do not want your children to hear this. This is not made for little ears. Today on the podcast, we have Laurie Krieg. She is an author, a podcast host, and you might follow her on Instagram. She has an amazing platform where she covers how to explain sexuality and talk about sexuality and all of the things related to sexuality, God's design for marriage, LGBTQ, trans, pornography, you name it. If it is involving sexuality, she talks about it from a gospel-centric biblical worldview. So she has an amazing approaches to share with us about her heart behind talking about all of these topics with our children. She has children herself that she uses these principles and talks in this way with, and she has found a lot of success in her parenting journey when covering these topics. And I think we can all learn a lot from her. Before we get into the episode, I want to give you my normal spiel. Please pause this episode, follow us on Spotify, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're consuming this content. It really does help us become more discoverable to new audiences. You'll get reminders when our podcasts are launched each week on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. So it's really important that you do that. And if I can ask, please leave us a 5-star review on any of those platforms. Every time you do that, it really does help our content get pushed out and become more discoverable to a new audience. And it just means the world to hear from you guys, what episodes you're liking, what you're thinking about, maybe what you want to hear next week on the podcast or in upcoming months. We would just love to get any comments, any feedback from you on the episodes themselves. So without further ado, Laurie, welcome to the show. All right, Laurie, welcome to the Raising Rock podcast. I'm so thankful that you are here.
I'm so thankful to be with you.
Yay. I'm going to just pack a punch right now. So
let's go.
If parents are waiting until their children are older, maybe puberty, or maybe they're waiting until their children ask about sex, what damage is already being done waiting until that moment or waiting until they're older that they could avoid by talking about it earlier?
If you wait too long, I'll just say, the Lord is gracious and merciful and kind. And it's really never too late, but it can make it more challenging if you do wait. So if you don't wait and you hit it, talk about sex, talk about puberty, and ideally the 7 to 10-year-old age range. And if you want to, we can talk about how to do that in a way that's not scarring. If you do it earlier, you really establish yourself as the primary, I just want to say Google or ChatGPT, or we could also use the phrase anchor. There's this psychological term known as the anchoring bias, that the first place we hear about something becomes the anchor or the gold standard to which we compare everything else we hear about that topic. We compare it to that first anchor. So if you're waiting till later, chances are good that your kid has already heard about sex on the playground, on the internet, through cousins, through friends, just chit chat in the world. And I don't want that to be the anchor. I don't want porn to be the anchor. I want you, their loving, trusting adult, to be the anchor to help them understand what's going on in the world and what's going on in their bodies.
I've also heard it framed up in the way, I love the anchoring bias term, but I've also heard it framed up in the way of almost this, I think it's called the founder's theory of my parents are the first people that have talked to me about this. So it takes the mystery out of it because it's, my dad's already talked to me about porn. I know all about that. My dad's the smartest person I know. He's already told me everything I need to know about that. And if you're the first person, you're the founder of that topic for them, they're going to come to you with questions versus going to Bobby on the playground or Jane on the playground and talking to them about this information that they hear.
Exactly. Yep. Founder, anchor, whoever goes first becomes the gold standard. And you're Google. You're the one they want to keep coming back to by the grace of God.
Yes. Amen. I think that's such a good point to hit on is it's by the grace of God that they keep coming back to us and they feel that comfort coming back to us on such a tricky topic. And I definitely do want to dig into practical word tracks and things that we can give to the audience. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit more bigger picture. I think in this culture that we live in, we're in California. I'm not too sure where you guys live, but we're in California.
Michigan.
So, Michigan. Okay. I don't know much about the political or social climate there, but here in California, all of the parents are very on guard with what culture is exposing their children to, LGBTQ, social media. It's just pervasive here in California, as I'm sure many other places. But I think California has really done well at making it really hard to raise kids. And so many parents are very concerned with protecting their children's innocence. And so they will do everything they can to delay a sex talk, delay porn conversations, delay LGBTQ, because they want to protect innocence. Are you of that mindset that delaying it as long as possible is protecting innocence, or is it actually setting them up for more harm?
I guess it depends on what you're delaying. So when my kids were 6, 9, and 10, I was like, all right, we're talking about porn, because I hadn't really talked that directly about it. So 6 years old, I was like, did I delay till 6? Maybe I should have been talking about it earlier than that, but it also was, I didn't say it explicit. So it really does matter what you're saying and at what age. There are really age appropriate ways to convey these things. But in general, punting these conversations for as long as possible, I think really does our kids a disservice. If we think of our kids like trees, trees need good soil, and they need the right amount of wind to build strong roots. Otherwise, they literally topple over from their own weight. It's just a fact. Like, they need wind. So if we think of our kids like trees and we just like hyper shelter them from everything, they're maybe getting a lot of good soil, but they're getting good soil, but it's like maybe a little much because they're never actually using their muscles to get strong wind to grow their roots deeper. And I'm going to add this too, because I talk a lot in the context of soil and wind. But more than that, what has God created us for is fruitfulness. We're not just supposed to protect our kids from the winds of the world. We're supposed to equip our kids in age-appropriate ways to bear fruit in this lost and broken world. And I think we can get so hyper-fixated on the fear that we forget what our mission is, which is to make disciples.
Amen. That's so good. I love the soil and the wind and the rooted. One of our brand verses is Colossians 2:7, rooted in truth, overflowing with gratitude, abounding in faith. It's the best. And I did a deep dive last year onto what does rooted in truth actually mean. And I talked a lot about the analogy of a tree with really deep roots. If your roots are really deep, if your soil is really good, the wind of culture, the car coming and hitting your tree, all these things that happen that try to knock the tree down, that tree goes nowhere. And it's never too early to start building those deep roots in our children.
That is right. And thinking about, like, truly, it's this week I've been thinking about the strength, and the Psalm 1 fruit.
Yeah.
How can we not just protect them from the world, but equip them to bear fruit in a lost and broken world?
Yeah.
It's convicting me.
No, it's so true. So then as it relates back to the sex conversation, what does equipping our children to bear fruit when it comes to this tricky topic that parents struggle with, what does that look like? Practically, what does that look like with parents and children?
In our home, how it practically looks to help our kids not just withstand culture, but bear fruit in a lost culture is to help them understand the positive vision for God's design for marriage, singleness, sex, all of it. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a culture that was very much teaching and equipping kids based on a theology of no. Here's sex, don't do this. Here's porn, don't do this. Here's LGBT, don't do this. It's all no. But what my little heart has started asking in my young 20s as I started parenting is why? It truly studies show that as we are learning as human beings, as children, is understanding the why and even knowing not just the scary no, but the positive why actually calms our brains down, helps us learn better, and just helps us exist in a world with more confidence. Studies show this, practically speaking. Talking to my kids about God's design for marriage. My daughter was 3 years old. We're in the bathroom. She's reading a book. Has nothing to do with same-sex marriage. An idea just pops in her head. I'm cleaning the bathroom, trying to take 4 whole seconds to clean the bathroom. She looks up to me and she says, Mom, can 2 girls get married? And I'm like, come again. Like, I just try to clean the toilet. You're 3. Is this when we have a theological discussion about God's design for marriage? So I paused my own chaos and anxious brain. And I was like, okay, Laurie, how can you not just parent to the theology of no, but the yes? So first, here's my go-to whenever I'm hit with a big, scary question with my kids is I always want to say, answer their question, compare it to God's good yes design, and then talk about how to love, the practical. So yes, Gwen, in our country, it is legal for 2 girls to get married. But that's not God's design. God wants marriage to be between 2 people whose bodies are different, or that might be a little complex for 3. So I said, God wants marriage to be between a mommy and a daddy because they are different. And when mommies and daddies love you, even though they're so different, they show you a picture, or they love each other. When mommies and daddies love each other, even though they're so different, they show you a picture of how much God loves you, even though he is so different from us. Oh, okay. And she went to find her sister. Now, ideally, I would have been and some people believe differently than you, and how do we love them? But that was multiple conversations over time. We could say that later. But what did she hear in that? She heard, oh, yes, 2 girls can get married. What did she hear in that? What did she learn? Mommy has answers. Mommy tells the truth. Because I could have been oh, no. And then she would have seen me do scared face and mirror neurons of fear. I could have punted it if I didn't know what to say. But I actually did know what to say in a way that would be, yep, they can. Which, yes, they can. Legally, they can. Because I don't want her to go find out on Google that they can. And mommy just lied to me. They can, but it's not God's best. But why? Because God wants marriage to be different. How does that help equip my daughter to live in this lost and weary world and bear fruit? Is she's not going to be afraid of the world. When she sees the world with same-sex marriage in it, she's going to go, oh yeah, Dad, I've known this since forever. But it's not different enough. Marriage is supposed to show the world a picture of God's love for them, his desire for oneness with them, even though he's so different from us. So what does that do in her? That gives her confidence to go and talk to her LGBTQ neighbor. And when debates come up, she could just talk about, here's what God's design is and how it's good. And my daughter, that daughter is 11 years old now, and I've already seen fruit. I've seen that non-anxious fruit in her. She can love her neighbor and with confidence. Now ask me in another 10 years, but I'm thankful for today.
So how old are all your children?
11, 9, and 6.
11, 9, and 6. And when you are talking about these bigger topics, so you're talking about how a baby is born, or how is a baby made, or what is porn, are you doing it in a family setting where they're all together? Are you pulling them aside based on age? Practically, what has that looked like in your home?
Yeah. So I do have a checklist in our book, Raising Wise Kids. I have a checklist to be is this age appropriate? How can I think through that? Because there's some things I'll tell the oldest 2, our daughters, 11 and 9-year-olds, that I'll tell them in more specific ways that I won't talk to the 6-year-old because he hasn't had these conversations. So it's not, I tell all of them some things, but the puberty talk, that's one-on-one. Because that is so intimate. The more intimate the conversation, the more intimate the environment should be, and the more personal the relationship should be with the person who's telling them about it. The deeper, the more intimate it is. It's about their bodies when we're talking about puberty. That wasn't going to be a whole class conversation.
Yeah.
That was going to be intimate.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a checklist would be so helpful. I know I'm so practical. Like when we were getting ready to talk about sex with my older son, he's now 8. We talked about it a couple years ago. So around the 6,
Good
7
for you.
age
Good.
mark, I went and I bought the birds and the bees course and I
Yeah.
did my homework and I was prepared for the conversation. And the reason I asked about other kids being present is we homeschool. And so we're just always all together. There's rare
Yep.
instances where my 5-year-old is not in the room. So he's probably overheard things. Granted, I think a lot of it's gone over his head, but he's probably overheard us talking to my older son more than I would have allowed my older son to overhear, if that
Right.
makes sense. And I just think that's part of when you have multiple children. The younger one is probably exposed to some things earlier on than
Yep.
your older one is exposed to. But that was just selfishly, I wanted to hear a little bit about what your approach is based on ages and if you pull people apart and keep them together and all of that.
It is. I so relate because, like, even my book, it's called Raising Wise Kids in a Sexually Broken World. My 9-year-old yesterday was like, "Oh yeah, that's your sex book." My 6-year-old, he just heard the word. And I'm like, "We'll talk to you about it real soon." And we need to do it sooner than later because
Yeah.
the language is so around our house.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've covered a little bit about the sex topic and puberty. What if conversations in your home? What is your stance on introducing the idea of pornography to our children? Because it is everywhere. I was watching the Steeler playoff game a couple nights ago, and the explicit commercials that were on were pornographic. It's everywhere. It's not even, it's just the dirty magazine in the corner like it was when you and I were growing up. It is everywhere. And so that's even something that we talked about early with my children because they were seeing things, and not that we're negligent in showing them weird stuff, but you watch a football game and it's on a commercial.
I know, it's a football game.
Yeah,
100%.
which should be family friendly and safe, but it is not.
No, I know. We were watching a Lions game. Same thing. I'm like, my goodness. So how we've approached it is we did the kids book. If you guys don't have it, I really do love the good pictures, bad pictures book. You can read those to your kids so that they're aware when they're very young. There's good pictures and bad pictures, but honestly, there's nothing like a conversation with our kids. So for us, there's things like we would just change the channel before we had what is pornography conversation. Like, you know what? That's not appropriate. You know what? They're showing pictures of private parts, and that's one of our family rules. We don't show those. We don't look at them. We don't ask to see them. So we had a list of family rules, which talked about private parts. But when it came to talking about porn, I literally just told myself, Laurie, we need to talk about porn. It was dinner, and our kids, this was like a couple years ago. So they're like 10, 8, and 5. And I was like, okay, you guys, did you know that people take pictures of private parts and they put them online? What? They do that? And my oldest one, like, we talked a little bit more about it, but I wanted to say it explicitly. This was literally over dinner, and I'm just praying. And they're like, what? They do that? I'm like, I know. And what are we supposed to do with private parts? We're not supposed to show them. No, we're supposed to honor them because they're the only parts of us that produce life. So we're not covering them because they're shameful. We honor them because they can produce life. So you guys, I want you to know 2 things about that. If you ever come across it on a screen or read about it in a book, they like throw random things in books that you don't always catch or on a commercial. Guys, if you ever see that, I want you to know 2 things. 1, it is not your fault. This is a new thing I've been saying to my kids because Satan is such a stupid jerk. His sexuality, shame, and self-hatred, they just tie together. So they like see something and they automatically just feel shame about themselves, even though it's not their fault. You guys, I just want you to know it's not your fault. Do you know whose fault it is? Whoever created it, whoever wrote that book, whoever posted that online, it's their fault. Because our kids, it's like they see it and then it's like it's bouncing around their brain. They're like, what do I do this? I'm like, nope, it's not your fault. Let's put that back. And then I want you to do another thing. I want you to shut the screen, shut the book, come and find me and tell me about it. We're going to talk about it. It is not your fault. You're not going to get in trouble. So it's not your fault. You're not going to get in trouble. Come and find me. So anytime that they've seen things, we talk about this enough so that even when they see things that are sus, so far we've been able to have conversations about it by the grace of God. And then we have a whole process for if and when they stumble across things, because porn is hunting our kids.
It is. It really is. I just had a conversation with my 5-year-old last night, and I'm taking a pause because I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this conversation.
Right.
That the Lord is so good and so funny how like timing of things work. I had this conversation with you, and literally 12 hours ago, I'm laying in bed with him and this conversation comes up. But we have same word track as you have used. We talk about private parts. I'm definitely adding in they bring life. I think that's a really good one. We talk about the people that can see your private parts. We talk about mom and dad, a doctor with permission, and then someday your wife. And we keep it at that short list. And that's just been as what's come up in our mind as we've been caught off guard of who can see my private parts. I'm like,
you do great. I love it.
Who can see them? But just last night, my son had been out playing with some neighbor friends, and this is a new territory for us. We live in a really sleepy neighborhood. We've had new families move in with little kids. And so our kids are now outside a lot more, playing with neighbor friends, in and out of neighbors' houses. And I'm not a helicopter mom. I don't parent from fear, but it's new territory for us.
Yes, you
my
have to
children
be aware.
are now in and out of other people's homes and just navigating all of that. And my 5-year-old, he's laying in bed last night and he goes, one of the neighbors saw my private part. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And I didn't get alarmed. I didn't get fear. I was like, no. I was just like, okay, tell me more. I was going to the bathroom in a bush and I think he saw it out. I think he looked at me. And I said, okay, just make sure next time you find a more private place to go to the bathroom or come inside and go to the bathroom in the house, and just tried to move on. But I did then revisit with him the importance of them being private and who is and isn't allowed to see them. When you're having those conversations with your children, what's included in the list of who can see them and when it is appropriate and all of that?
So I just say whoever mom says you can see their private parts. So I'll say if a babysitter when they're very young, because we've been having these conversations since they were very young, I'll look at them. I've given permission for Michaela, was your babysitter, Cassie. You can shut the door, but if you need help, she is a safe person. Mom knows her. And I want to be able to know them. So it's whoever mom says, or even literally every time my kids, 11, 9, and 6, every time I go to the doctor, I remind them. And praise God, I have a Christian doctor, pediatrician who reminds them. Your mom, I look at them. I'm giving them permission. Not everyone has this permission, but I'm giving them permission so that they know, like, I'm trustworthy. Mom is saying it's okay for them. So it's really through me. But then we talk about trust in a unique way that we borrowed from Brene Brown, talking about a trust jar. How can you know who's trustworthy? Because that's tricky for kids to understand.
And what is that trust jar theory?
I just noticed so young. I'm sure you saw this in your kids. You're like, oh my word, they trust everyone. It's very cute and also gives me anxiety. So I was like, Brene Brown, she talked about this and I just adapted it for our home. She says that when you meet someone, it's like a jar of trust appears between you and this person. And every time this individual, now this is Laurie's adaptation, every time this person walks in the way of Jesus, or behaves in a way you expect, or does what you're like, they say they're going to do something and then they do it, they're reliable. So walks in the way of Jesus, is reliable, and does both for a long time. They get marbles inside that jar of trust. So walk in the way of Jesus. So people who don't know Jesus, they can walk in the way of Jesus. There's this intrinsic Romans 1 sort of understanding, just like that. It's instinctive to people, or they are reliable. They do what they're going to say they're going to do, and they do both for a long time. They earn marbles. But then if my kids are like, oh, can we have a sleepover? I just met them 1 minute ago. I can just say, hey guys, how many marbles do you think that they have in their trust jar? They're like, like one. I just met them. Like, okay, so we're going to wait before we talk about sleepovers, before we talk about sharing a room or going on vacation with someone or even having them babysit. I want to make sure that they have more marbles in their jar. it's been really helpful for my kids to understand who is more trustworthy than others and why.
That is so practical and such a great analogy, because we all have some type of reward system in our home, whether it's a jar with marbles or a sticker chart or something that will make sense to our children of whether or not that individual is, what did you say, reliable and loves Jesus and
walks in the ways of Jesus, does both. For a long time.
That is so good. Speaking of sleepovers,
hey,
what is your thought on sleepovers?
Yeah. As confident as I appear, and I'm telling you, I have to go to the Lord with my anxiety every single day about my children. Okay. So sleepovers just ratchet it up even more. So I've been praying about it. I do not have a one size fits all thing. The trust jar analogy has been so helpful because we have had, at first I was like, never sleepovers. My husband's a licensed mental health therapist. Like the stories we hear, the things you can read online, blah, 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 blah. It's terrible. However, we live in a real world where our kids beg us for sleepovers. And so I was like, what is our policy? So Krieg's, we don't have a policy. It's just how many marbles you got in the trust jar and how much can I control of the situation? Bear with me. By that, cousins who I know and have known for 1,000 years, we've had my kids stay at their house or they've stayed at our house. We still have family rules. Like we shut the door when we go to the bathroom. We leave the door open in their room when they go to sleep, even with cousins who have 1,000 marbles in their trust jar. But friends who we like, no. And I'm like, okay, in my head, I'm like maybe they have half a jar of marbles. I'm like, let's see how much I can control. And by that, can we do the sleepover at my house so that I can enforce Krieg family rules and make sure the door is open when they're playing, and I can do random check-ins, and we can have these sort of, my kids will know that Krieg family rules are happening at our house especially. But I don't have a one size fits all. I really just try and discern what's the trust level and then just pray a lot.
If my kids are anything like yours, I'm just laughing thinking about this analogy of the trust jar, because we're definitely going to do that. I could see my kids going to the friend that there's not enough marbles in the jar and be like, my mom said there's not enough marbles in your jar. Have your kids ever done anything like that where you're just like, no?
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. This is why you like practice things. So, like my kids, they know what sex is before a lot of other kids do. They're like so comfortable talking about LGBT and all these different things from a gospel view, but I'll reenact things. I'll be like, hey, so what are we going to do? Are we going to go and tell our friend about what we just said? Yeah. No. Here's what we can say. So I think if you got a kid who does those things as a quick chatter, it's good to reenact. Hey, what are we going to say?
Yeah, I got
kids,
two. They sure do. I've got two chatters. I can absolutely see them going and doing stuff. When we've had the Santa conversation with them that Santa is not real, gigs up. We've done that whole thing. And I ended it with, do not talk to your friends about this. This is between our family and our family alone. So I've learned the hard way that I have to put disclaimers at the end of every conversation with my two children, because that's one of the things. We live very openly and honestly with our children. There's not a lot that we don't talk to our kids about. We talk to them about current events. We talk to them about sex and porn and all of these things in an age appropriate way.
Totally.
But with such an open door of communication between them, I've had to work overtime on what they can and cannot go and share with their friends, just to protect other parents being able to be the founder or the anchoring bias in their family, and not my kid being the one on the playground going and sharing everything.
That's real life.
It is real life for sure. Tell us about your book. What inspired you to write it? Why should everyone go buy it? Just give us that bird's eye view.
So I've been in the human sexuality conversation for about 10 years, just focused on leaders and churches, just doing the slow training there. And I was just finishing up my master's, and I'd been doing like a lot of identity work and who am I apart from my work? And I was like, I'd like to write an identity book. And I was just journaling, and my husband was sitting near me and my kids were playing on the floor. And I kid you not, it was just this overwhelming burden from the Lord for my fellow moms. And it was really like, hey, Laurie, I have gifted you this equipping for the last 10 years, I have gifted you these kids to steward, that you are just trial and erroring all these things with them. Would you be willing to share it with other moms? I was like, oh, heck no. Heck no. Because I'm like, I know how contentious the sexuality space is. Mommy world, hell hath no fury like a scared mom. I was like, I don't want to be in that. But then it's like this invitation, and honestly, this deep love that God put in my heart for my fellow mom and dad. And we're so scared and we don't know what to do. He's, would you be willing? I was like, you know what? I really do love you, Lord, and I do love my fellow mom. So I am willing to step into this hard space, come what may, and offer what God has gifted us in moments like these.
It's amazing. You said that there is no fury like the fury of a mom or an angry mom or a scared mom. I could not agree more. Have you had any negative experiences with the work that you're doing? Because in my mind, I'm like, how could anybody have a bad experience with being equipped? But I'm sure you've seen some challenges.
So I've been in the human sexuality space for 10 years. So I have gotten fury in that space, like just really trying to be like, hey, here's God's vision for marriage and gender and sexuality. Here's how we can do it gracefully and truthfully. And so then that will make the polar extremes very angry, because I'm either too loving or I'm too truthful. So I've been in that space, but to be honest, I haven't yet encountered the mom pushback. Like, honestly, it's just been like, I haven't been in like publicly in this part of this conversation for super long, but I've just gotten mostly, oh my word, someone's saying it out loud. Thank you. Thank you for talking and bringing us together. So to be honest, I haven't yet, but I don't know. We'll see.
It's historically been such a taboo. You said in the very beginning of the conversation, growing up, it was no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't.
Yeah.
It's been a historically very taboo conversation, especially in the church. Yeah. And so I think to be in a space where you're willing to take one for the team and say, okay, I'm going to talk about sex, and I'm going to talk about porn, and I'm going to talk about trans, and I'm going to talk about all these tricky topics, but I'm going to run them through God's view on these topics and the gospel. And I'm going to equip parents how to have that conversation. I just thank you for your work and taking a tricky topic and making it accessible for parents to convey these biblical truths to our children in a confused world.
Oh my gosh, help us. Lord, help us. No, it's truly an honor. Like, aren't you so thankful? Like, God loves us, that he didn't just leave us with no one to help. Like, I just feel so thankful. He loves us so much.
Absolutely. Are there any, I don't know if the word is weird, are there any unique family rules that you have, or unique things that just your family does that's a production of the work that you do?
It's probably in spaces like yourself, like you're reading the things. So things are going to be pretty normal to you. Keeping doors open when kids play. Like, my kids are always like rolling their eyes at me, like, oh my word, mom. And I'm like, I know I'm obnoxious, aren't I? Let's leave the door open. Okay, love you. So checking on our kids, thinking about sleepovers, being a little, let your kid climb the tree and break their arm. But then if that happens, but don't break their brains online. I think maybe something that's still uniquely odd is when it comes to rainbow flags, when it comes to seeing trans people in the real world and engaging and loving trans people, and we talk about it. I think so many parents are either like, we fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, people please. So we just see the rainbow flag and we strongly react, or we freeze, or we people please, like we change our theology. And so I think perhaps something that's weird or odd is like, I see it and I'm like, let's talk about it. What do you guys think? And then we start with, what's the question? What's God's good design? And how do we love? I think I'm recognizing we're pretty weird in that.
But it's so needed, because we can't avoid it. It's especially, again, I keep bringing it back to California, but especially in California, we
Truly.
are seeing trans people everywhere. I can't go to Target. I can't go to anywhere without seeing a trans person. And if we're not honest with our children and we just, don't look over there. Don't look over there. It confuses them of, why is my mom not talking to me about this? Something's clearly not right.
Yes.
Why is my mom not talking to me about this? And for us, we just affirm God's design. God made that person a woman, and they're really confused and they're making different choices. And that's just how we've approached. Obviously, we say more than that, but we're very truthful about what God's design is and why it's important to live in God's design for that person, but they're making a sinful choice.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your word track on those things? Because I'm open to, I would love to know more about how you handle that.
First of all, I love you're like, let's talk about it. And you're choosing like grace and truth. So here's how we've gone about it is, whether my kids say it or not, I'm just parents, if I can just say something, your kids are noticing more than you think. I was talking with a mom this week and she was like, yeah, we saw a trans person. And then I thought my 6-year-old didn't even notice. But then I was like, okay, Laurie, I'm going to do what you say. I'm going to talk about it. And she said, she brought it up. And then he was like, yes, thank you. So if I could just say one thing, is there something called an unformulated experience? When our kids see something that they don't understand, it goes bumping around their brain until they can interpret it. It's in their right brain, and it's like saying, what is that? What is that? What is that? They need left brain language to bring clarity to ambiguous experiences. Otherwise, it can become what's called an unformulated experience, which is just can be very distressing. It's, I don't know what that was, but it stressed me out. It just kind of hangs out in a kid's brain until they can bring language. So parents, when we interpret the world for them in a gospel view, we are serving our children. We're serving them with language. So if we see a trans person in the store, it's not every time because we have to move on. We have to go get groceries. But there's times I'll like one example. We went to dinner a few weeks ago. I actually posted about this in my store on my socials. Is I saw a woman who was transitioning to male, and you could just tell she had the body of a woman but had a beard. And I saw my 11-year-old looking, but we've had these conversations like 6 or 7 times. Sorry for saying 6 or 7 a million times on the show, but forgive me, parents, if your kids
if you're
are around.
not a parent and you're watching this, 6, 7 is everywhere. Google it.
Nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. But I noticed her, but I didn't see my 6-year-old noticing. But I was like, okay, Laurie, this would be a good opportunity. So we leave. We're not talking about this in front of the individual. We're just engaging the world as we do. Hello, how are you? Then we go to the car and I'm like, hey guys, did you see that person who was sitting next to us? And my 6-year-old said, yeah, why is that girl trying to be a boy? And I was like, oh, he actually noticed. I didn't realize he noticed. And so again, what's my formula, or what do I do? It's answer the question. So let's talk about it, compare to God's good design, and then talk about how to love. So what's the question is, what was going on with that girl who looked like a boy? I said, yeah, she seemed like she was transitioning. So I'm explaining with language. What's that? She was probably taking hormones and changing her clothes so that she could look like a boy. Oh, now I'm still not done explaining, because you're like, why? Why is she doing that? Why would you just randomly do that? And so I want my kids to see people and as God sees them, as image bearers of a holy God. That's not affirming sin. That's seeing people for who they truly are, which is an image bearer of a holy God who are seeking Jesus. Okay, here's what I'm guessing is that when she looks in the mirror and she sees her girl body, she probably doesn't feel like her body, her outside body and her insides, how she feels as a girl, she feels like they don't match. She's struggling. That's a word our family uses a lot, is struggling. Now, here's where we're going for empathy. I'm still explaining what they're seeing. But guys, we all struggle with things, don't we? Yeah, we do. What do you struggle with? And we just go around the horn. Juliet, what do you struggle with? Oh, I can be mean to people when I'm angry. How about you, Gwen? I can be anxious. How about mom? I can make my work my identity. I can care too much what people think of me. So it's like normal. brokenness is normal in our home and talking about how we're broken. I said,
our sin nature. We all have a sin nature. Every single one of us. We were born with it.
Every single one. I know. We're all born that way. Pun intended. So here I am we're all talking about it. And I say, and what are we supposed to do with our struggles? They're like, oh, we're supposed to, because we talked about this. We're supposed to take them to God and have our community, or how we say it, our family, help us take those struggles to God. We're supposed to ask God for help to take them to him. Yep. So this woman, it seems like she's not asking, seems like she's not taking it to the Lord, but instead she's going with the struggle, which all my kids can relate to. I can relate to. How many times do I go to my idols instead of to the Lord with my own emptiness, my own pain, to try and resolve my own stuff? So still, now we're not looking down on this person. We're still looking eye to eye. We're like, okay, you're helping me understand the world. You're serving me, Mom. And you're helping me not look down on her, but seeing eye to eye, heart to heart, imago Dei to imago Dei, made in the image of God and made in the image of God. Now let's take it to God's design. But can she ever become a boy? It's just brass tacks here. No. Why not, honey? Now, these are other little micro conversations. That foundation work is one little conversation at a time. So this is another one we've had. Why can't she ever become a boy? What's a boy? We literally talked about this today. Boys have a penis, and you could even say a natural penis, because you can create an artificial penis. Boys have a natural penis, or a penis that works, and they can help make a baby in a special way. Girls have a what, guys? A natural vagina, or you could just say a vagina, whatever you want to say, because you can create a vagina, a natural vagina, and they can get pregnant. So boys have a penis, they can help make a baby in a special way. Girls have a vagina, they can get pregnant. They have the potential to get pregnant, even if not everyone gets pregnant. So this girl who's struggling with how she feels inside, can't ever become a boy. No, she can't, Mom. What do you hear in my tone? Do you hear me railing at the world? Do you hear me raging? No, you hear me saying, here's what's true. And let me just say this, we do not need to teach our kids fear, vitriol, or othering to have them love God's design. After I have this conversation, there's this holy grief and longing. Oh, I wish she would follow Jesus. Isn't that the heart of God? Isn't that Jesus in Matthew 23 saying, Jerusalem, the city that kills prophets, how long I've wanted to gather you together like a mother hen gathers her chicks, but you would not let me. It's God's heart. So guys, some people do struggle that way. So now I want to talk about how to love. What are we going to do? Are we going to go, what are we going to say to them? What are we going to do? Now, sometimes my kids, they'll be like, I'm going to walk up to her and say, you're not a boy. So this is why we have pre-conversations. Even after all that, no, we're going to love people just like we want to be loved. We're going to love people in their struggles just like you want to be loved in your struggles, and help to be shown Jesus.
So good. And always pointing back to the truth of God's word and the truth of the gospel and Jesus. I love it. Laurie, you have been so helpful, and you have shared so many amazing nuggets that will be so practical for everyone listening. So thank you.
Good.
Remind all of us the name of your book, where we can find it, where we can connect with you, what you have coming up that you're excited about. Just tell everything.
Oh, you guys, I love to connect with you. The book is called Raising Wise Kids in a Sexually Broken World, which that is what we're trying to do, raise wise kids in a sexually broken world. You can find on everywhere you get books right now, which is super great. And you can find me on IG. Just search for Laurie Krieg. If you DM me, that's the best way. If you've got questions, sometimes I punt your questions to our podcast because it's hard to answer with all this nuance in a little Instagram message. Or sometimes I set up little micro conversations. And then we've got a ton of conferences coming up, parenting conferences. So I hope I'm in your world. You can look at lauriekrieg.com for where those are.
Amazing. So something new to season 2 that nobody knows yet is we are going to start asking the guest at the end of every episode a value-based question specifically to Raising Rock. So you're the first one that I'm going to ask this to. No pressure.
Okay.
So at Raising Rock, our 4 core values of Rock are respect, obedience, courage, and kindness. If you had to pick one of those 4 values that you feel best reflects the work you're doing, or a little piece of encouragement that you want to drop to the audience, what value would you pick, and how would you encourage the audience?
Courage is going to stand out to me right now. Again, I can't overstate how much of the quiet work I have to do to be able to do the teaching work, both to my kids and to this beautiful podcast conference work that I do. So parents, precious caregivers of the next generation, it takes courage to even sit quietly and say, "Dear Jesus, I am so afraid. God, I give you my fear. Will you help me, Lord? Will you fill me with your spirit right now that surpasses all understanding? Will you fill me with your peace that surpasses all understanding? And God, will you help me to walk through my fear to equip my kids and walk in courage?" Even me, who is teaching on this, I am so reliant on the Lord for his courage and his peace to be able to teach my kids and teach in this space. So guys, he will equip you. I promise.
Well, I see you having so much courage, taking on such a difficult topic and speaking about it so lovingly with such grace, but such truth behind it. Yeah. That is the courageous, the kind. It's all of them. You're respectful, you're obedient, you're courageous, and you're kind. And so I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being on the show today.
It is a total joy to be with you. Thanks for having me.